Right, all you glorious gamers out there, welcome to the PlayerStoo Podcast, the video game podcast for gamers like you, by gamers like you. You can find PlayerStoo on all the social media, that's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayerStoo.com, that's PlayerStoo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts, that really helps us out. It does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. And while you're over there, if you could leave us a review as well, again, it just helps us out even more. Thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. It genuinely does mean a lot. Alright, and on with the show. My name is Mark Henderson. With me, as always, Mr. Lewis Camley. How's it going, Lewis?
Going very well, Mark. Good to see you as ever. How you doing?
Yeah, not bad. I was telling you just before the podcast started, Lewis, that scaffolding has been erected immediately outside the window I am currently facing. And there is also quite significant rain happening in Glasgow right now. So it's louder than I am used to in here. So ladies and gentlemen, if you can hear any of this on the recording, I deeply apologise, but there is literally nothing I can do about it.
You could get out there and dismantle that scaffolding.
I could not. I think there's multiple reasons why that is a bad idea, Liz.
What you really want is to get yourself a lockdown cupboard where you can be protected from all windows and not have to listen to that.
Yeah, but again, that comes with other problems. Also, disclosure the second, Lewis, I have updated my Mac's software eventually. There have been reasons why I haven't updated it until this point, but it also came along with a GarageBand update. I don't believe that anything will have changed, dear listener. This should sound exactly the same to you as it ever did. However, if anything has gone terribly wrong, I am blaming that.
Get your excuses in early.
Getting the excuses in early. But let's forget all of that, Lewis. What have you been playing this week?
Well, Mark, this week, as well as playing more Hitman, which I think I'll be doing constantly for the next few months, I have now played every single level, I think, in the game, across all 3 games.
Oh, cool.
Which is fantastic. And at some point, I hope that I can do a bit of a ranking of those levels and where I think they all sit in relation to one another. But kind of more interestingly this week, Mark, I made a start on Blasphemous.
Nice.
Yeah,
Metroidvania.
Yeah, you and I have talked about it a lot off air over the past year or so. But for anyone who doesn't know it, it's a 2D side-scrolling Metroidvania. It's got a really weird but really interesting art style and kind of setting. It's basically drawing a lot on Spanish Catholicism and how weird and deep and dark that can be. And it's set in a kind of fictitious land, but is very, very informed by, Catholic iconography and mythology and that kind of thing. I've only played the first couple of hours so far. Thus far, I'm enjoying it. It's not quite as difficult as I was worried it was going to be, although that's not to say that there isn't challenge.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is difficult, and I'll come back to this point in a few different ways, but it's not as difficult as Hollow Knight was at its beginning, which is definitely where I am making the comparison here. I've most recently played Hollow Knight as a 2D side-scrolling Metroidvania game.
Oh man, these 2 games are very comparable, I think.
Yeah.
This is a completely fair comparison list.
They are, and so in that, basically, to spoil my point, essentially, I think that this isn't as good as Hollow Knight, which is no criticism, really, because Hollow Knight, I think we certainly would both agree, is one of the best video games possibly ever made.
Yes, I would
this isn't
certainly
quite
say
at
that, yes.
This isn't quite at that level.
It's not quite one of the best video games ever made. I think we can forgive it for that.
and you cannot blame what is a small team for that. But no, all things aside, it's really good. The setting and the story are really interesting. It's typically, for one of these games, it drops you in quite blind. You are discovering how the world works and how the setting works effectively by exploring it and just running into strange things and talking to NPCs and all that. So the exploration side of it I've been enjoying so far. Combat is basic so far, but you can again see the upgrade trees ahead of you and the various ways that you can customize your sword. You also have spells that you can cast, which again at the moment I can only equip one, but there's obviously going to be a whole ton of things that I can do eventually. It's very early stages at the moment, but the thing that I do like about it in comparison to that early stage of Hollow Knight is that for the first major boss, at least that I encountered, there's a save right outside the room that occurs in, and so it's not...
You're having flashbacks to the Radiance as this was happening.
Well, having flashbacks to the fucking Mantis Lords, which, really spoiled the start of that game for me.
They're in there to fuck you at the start, man. They definitely are in Hollow Knight. If anyone here listening is stuck at the Mantis Lords at the beginning of Hollow Knight, you don't need to fight them at the beginning. They are not a mandatory boss.
Yeah,
just move on.
Move on from them, absolutely. But there's been nothing so far in this that's made me feel like that. There's been some tricky fights, some tough bosses, some bits where I'm probably playing a bit casually and dying more easily than I ought to be, but I'm just kind of getting my feel for it at the moment. So I'll have more to say in future weeks, but so far as a Metroidvania, I'm really enjoying it. The setting and the style, as I say, are kind of unlike anything else I've experienced in gaming. That it's easy to describe a game as like dark or bloody or anything like that, but it's kind of beyond that. It does have a real kind of religious core to it. It's all crowns of thorns, it's all seeping wounds, and so I think for me, I'm kind of really intrigued to see where that goes.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, man. I have to admit, it's definitely been on my to play list for a very, very long time. Way back when we actually spoke about playing it together when we could still see one another, but alas, I think that has fallen by the wayside. But I'm still very, very keen to play it, man, so I'll be very intrigued to see what you think of it.
Definitely, yeah. And just to say, for anyone who is also thinking of playing it, or based on what we've just said, thinks about picking it up, I got it for $10 on the Switch eShop. It seems to alternate between being on sale either on Nintendo or PlayStation fairly regularly. So if this catches your imagination in any way, go and check it out.
Absolutely.
And what have you been playing, Mark?
Well, Lewis, it's Persona 5, isn't it? It's the same. We're 80 hours in. It's the same. But I have also been playing Super Mario 3D World, Lewis, as a blessed relief to the listeners who do not have to listen to me talk about Persona 5 again.
Nice.
But Lewis, Super Mario 3D World is absolutely fucking great. It is really, really good.
Good stuff. Yeah, tell me more.
I like that it's a sort of hybrid between the traditional Mario side-scroller and a 3D Mario game. So it's a lot more linear than your Odysseys, obviously your Mario 64s and whatever. And I actually really like that. I prefer a 2D platformer to a 3D platformer. Just naturally, that's just what I prefer. So yeah, I'm responding really well to it. I am just about to enter World 3, I think. And everything that I've played so far has just been simply joyous. I have
nice.
really, really, really loved it. I've really loved it.
How does it overall compare to your experiences of other Marios then?
Well, as I said, it's a good hybrid of both, I think anyway. It has a bit of exploration within its levels, but again, the levels are much more linear. It's more about finding secrets than it is about exploring necessarily, if that makes sense. I don't know why. I just prefer things that way in my platformers for whatever reason. I know that you really, really, really liked Odyssey, and I liked Odyssey as well, but nowhere near as much as you did, I don't think. And I think that is because I just am not that into 3D platformers in general. Therefore, I honestly think that I'm preferring this to Odyssey.
Wow, yeah.
I'm not sure that will be the case for you, though.
I mean, honestly, in that regard, I'm intrigued because I think a big part of my love for Odyssey was that it's basically the first Mario game that I had properly played, And so part of the reason that I have continued to explore other Mario games, even outside of the 2D and 3D games, is because of that. I got a real joy from that, as you described it there. And I've been trying to find that in the other games. But something about this one, the merging of those two styles, and just the fact that, it's effectively the most recent quasi 3D Mario game other than Odyssey, right? So it should be up to that level.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I'm really excited to play it. I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying it so much.
I have to say, it is that level of polish is on it as well. Like, it feels tight in the way that Odyssey did as well, It didn't feel as if this was rushed or it's glitching all over the place. Everything just sings, and it's just really great to play. It's the way a Mario game should play, and my early impressions of it are very, very positive. And to be honest with you, I almost had to drag myself back to playing Persona 5 the other day because I was like, I don't want to put this down. And I honestly never thought I would enjoy it that much. So yeah, I'm really, really pleased with my initial... Well, I was going to say a few hours, but in actual fact, it's probably been quite a lot already.
But no time with Bowser's Fury yet?
No time with Bowser's Fury yet. I think I will play through the original game, if you like, and then get to the DLC after. But I don't think you need to do that, to be honest with you. I think they both stand alone, basically. You can play one or the other and chop and change between the two of them, I believe. But I've just not jumped into that side of the game yet. But I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, nice one. I'll make sure to ask you about that in a future week then.
Anyway, Lewis, time for the news. Alright, news item number 1. The controller drift saga continues, Lewis, as it has been revealed that the components that make up the joysticks on the DualSense may have an operating life of just over 400 hours, which is not enough. As someone who has got 80 hours into Persona 5, that is not enough. This all came to light from a video by iFixit on YouTube. Now, the first thing to note about this is that your mileage may vary here, basically, depending on how you use the controller. But fuck me, man, that is not even close to being enough. But the other thing that was very surprising to me is that the same component is used in the DualShock 4, the Xbox One controller, the Switch Pro controller, and the Xbox Elite controller, the 150 quid Xbox Elite controller. They all use the same component, so I don't know where your 150 quid's going, but it's not in the quality of your joysticks because it's the same. iFixit described these off-the-shelf joystick hardware components as having a long history of predictable and preventable issues. They also called for console makers to make it easier to replace joysticks, making this statement in their video.
It's bizarre to us that console makers don't consider joysticks to be consumable parts and design them to be easily replaced. No device created for a finite number of actions, especially one that lives near so much contamination and takes so much abuse, can maintain perfect performance forever.
And I would totally agree with that, yeah. I think that this news is a bit of a double-edged sword, actually. On the one hand, it is absolutely ridiculous that the operational life of these components is something that a really hardcore gamer could consume in a few months. 400 hours is ludicrously short. However, on the other hand, if the same component is used in other controllers that we know haven't had huge drift issues, or certainly I haven't experienced any on the 3 DualShocks that I've had, maybe the DualSense drift issues that we're seeing now are more fringe cases, basically, rather than something that is prevalent with the controller itself. Unlike the Joy-Con drift issues, where that definitely is something that's prevalent with those controllers, you know, that is something that is widespread. Maybe we're only seeing fringe issues with the DualSense, you know, or at least that is what I'm hoping.
Yeah, very much hoping the same, obviously. As we said last week, neither of us are experiencing drift issues with the DualSense at the moment, but both of us did experience pretty significant issues with Joy-Cons over the years, I mean, and quite quickly on. I agree with you there, Mark. I think this is an interesting bit of information altogether because, yeah, on the one hand, terrible shelf life of these things. And as you say, like a hardcore gamer, I think even quicker than a few months could go through 400 hours. You've got to hope, I've got to hope that it is literally just that there are, you know, some issues with early consoles, some of the production lines, all of that kind of thing. Like, we often see hardware issues when a new console or a new piece of hardware of any description really comes out.
Yeah, when things are mass-produced in this manner, shit's going to go wrong somewhere at some point, you know what I mean? Not everyone's going to be perfect.
No.
But that being said, they also should be able to replace or repair those components easily, and there doesn't really seem to be any good reason why they shouldn't be able to do that, apart from the fact that the manufacturers are preventing it due to the way that the controllers are made. So there's also that aspect to it as well. Yeah,
which does feel a little bit like the manufacturers funneling us towards having to buy replacements. But yeah, on the other side of it, there's a little bit of hope in that suggestion that these sticks and the components that are causing the problems are actually quite prevalent in gaming. Like, we have been using these sticks or sticks like them for a long time, and until the Joy-Cons, I've never really had this issue. I've had plenty of other controller issues. I've had plenty of joysticks that have worn away a bit with use or whatever, but nothing like drift.
I've never experienced drift on any controller ever until the Joy-Cons, and as far as I'm aware, at least in the last generation, a lot of those controllers have used these same components, so that has given me a little bit of hope that I'm not going to have to splash out 60 quid on a new DualSense anytime. Well, hopefully this year at least. Jesus.
But yeah, you just absolutely shouldn't have to do that. It's an interesting thing, all of that, because on the one hand you look at it and you say, well, maybe this is a few one-offs, a few bad cases. So then you have to ask, well, why is it so bad on the Joy-Con? And conversely, given that it has been so bad with the Joy-Cons, why were these components still used in the DualSense and also in the Xbox controllers and others?
Well, I think that the components in the Joy-Cons are different because they're so thin and small and tiny. I don't think that it's the same component.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's the Switch Pro controller that has the same joysticks. So I think that the Joy-Cons have their own issue. Like, that's a whole other thing that's happening with them, and that is prevalent.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that it is not the case for the DualSense.
Yeah, that encourages me, or reassures me even a lot more then, because, I've been thinking that if these literally are the same sticks, then this is going to happen, but that is reassuring to think that maybe not. It's still not great that you've got a report coming out saying that your sticks might only last 400 hours. I feel like a lot of people will be starting to count their play hours a lot more closely over the next year as well.
PlayStation don't allow that. Anyway, Lewis, news item number 2, and better news on the PlayStation front. Jim Ryan has given an interview to GQ in which he talks about the second generation of PSVR and about more PlayStation games coming to PC. Ryan has made this series of statements regarding PSVR. I will be playing the part of the interviewer, and Lewis will be playing the part of Jim Ryan in these statements. So the obvious question is, what's changed from the first headset?
So this will be a completely new VR format for PS5. PlayStation has considered VR as a strategic opportunity and a big innovation story. We think there are two themes that you're going to see: us capturing the technological progress that has taken place since the present VR system came to market, and a considerable amount of lessons learned. Because the present system was our first one, changes will be things like moving to a very easy single-cord setup with this one, and many other similar learnings. Dev kits are about to go out.
VR is getting a lot more traction now, but it's still a nascent market. Why make a follow-up to the first headset?
We believe in VR and have been extremely happy with the results with the present PlayStation VR, and think that we will do good business with our new VR system for PlayStation 5. More importantly, we see it as something beyond this coming iteration that really could be really big and really important. We like to innovate. We think our community likes us to innovate. I turn around the question and say, why not? For us, it's a very logical step to take. We're very excited by it, and we think that people who are going to make VR games for our new VR system are going to be very excited too.
So the big difference, which you mentioned there, is that it's going to be one cord that you connect to your PlayStation 5.
That was a very simple and visible illustration of a lesson that we've learned from when iterating from the present system to the new one. We're not actually releasing any specs at this stage. That will start to come over the course of this year when we'll be talking more.
And then as the interview continues, they move on to talking about more PlayStation games coming to PC off the back of Horizon Zero Dawn. Again, I will be interviewer, Lewis will be Jim Ryan. So releasing PlayStation games on PC was something that PlayStation held back on for a long time. Now it sounds like you're very much on that bandwagon. What changed?
I think a few things changed. We find ourselves now in early 2021 with our development studios and the games that they make in better shape than they've ever been before. Particularly from the latter half of the PS4 cycle, our studios made some wonderful, great games. There's an opportunity to expose those great games to a wider audience and recognise the economics of game development, which are not always straightforward. The cost of making games goes up with each cycle as the calibre of the IP has improved. Also, our ease of making it available to non-console owners has grown, so it's a fairly straightforward decision for us to make.
This is following on from your publishing Horizon Zero Dawn on PC in August last year. How did that go?
We assessed the exercise in two ways. Firstly, in terms of the straightforward success of the activity of publishing the game on PC, people liked it and they bought it. We also looked at it through the lens of what the PlayStation community thought about it. There was no massive adverse reaction to it, so we will continue to take mission steps in this direction.
There was also a PlayStation blog post regarding PSVR 2.0, I don't really know what to call it yet, Lewis, where they talk about a new VR controller that incorporates key features from the DualSense. Hopefully not the fucking drift issues, but the other better features of the DualSense. Which is also great news because the PlayStation Move wand thing was an absolute fucking joke from day one, and it was ridiculous that they used that for PSVR in the first place. Jim Ryan also said that PSVR dev kits are about to go out, as you heard in the interview, but As the dev kits are just going out now, the PS blog also confirms it won't be launching in 2021, which, again, you would expect. Regarding the PlayStation Studios games coming to PC, Jim Ryan and later Sony Bend confirmed that Days Gone would be coming to PC in the spring. And apparently this is the start of a, quotes, whole slate of games coming to PC. So, Lewis, starting with PSVR, I think it is incredibly good to see that PlayStation are continuing to invest in VR. I think it is very good that they are redesigning the headset, and I think it is very, very good indeed that they are redesigning the controllers and also bringing the DualSense features onto the PSVR controllers as well. Just makes that sort of homogeneous across your input devices, which is good. I'm slightly concerned about what this will cost, because the wireless Oculus Quest you can get for like 300 quid. I think it RRPs at 400 quid, but from a quick Google search you can quite easily get it for 300 quid. And as I said, that's wireless. You will still be tethered to your PlayStation, it sounds like, with PSVR 2.0. And the current headset currently costs 300 quid for something that is much less good than the Quest, you know? So that is my main concern about this. But thoughts generally?
Yeah, generally speaking, I think, as you said, it's great that they are continuing to support it. I think as much as we aren't big VR players, we just haven't really bought into it yet, quite literally paid the access fee.
Yeah, but I'm definitely open to it.
Yeah.
You know?
It's definitely a side of games that I want to see continue. I want to see development there continue. I want to see what kind of ideas it can bring out. You know, effectively, we're waiting for, you know, that game that you cannot possibly avoid playing, and that means that you have to get VR, and Half-Life Alyx is maybe the closest that there's been to that so far.
Well, PlayStation need their Half-Life Alyx though, don't they? You know?
Exactly that, yeah. They've got a slew of good VR games, great VR games by all accounts. You know, they need their The Last of Us VR, but, you know, not that specifically, but the thing that makes...
Like, can you imagine
yeah.
that, Rich?
It'd be terrifying. But yeah, we need something that is like, okay, now I have to buy a VR headset. I have to play this because it is the game to play right now. And so the fact that they're going to continue working on that, I think, is great. And for anyone who has already been investing in PlayStation VR, it's great for them that it's not just going to fall by the wayside. Your cost point, though, I mean, who can know? You would hope that they would look at the market and say, this has to be priced lower than a wireless one, because evidently that is a preferable option. But they can also look at it and say, well, more people can probably afford to get a PS5 that can run this than can afford the high-end PC that will play high-end VR games there, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point, man. That's a good point.
So yeah, that will be the decision, I think, that Sony will have to make, and that gamers will have to make eventually. Is it worth, for the convenience of the fully wireless thing and access to everything that you could get across a platform like Oculus or, you know, Valve's Index or whatever, or is it easier for you just to have a thing that you can plug into your PS5 that's right there? You know, you don't have to do any of the faffing about with drivers and all that stuff. Plug and play, that's maybe easier. So
yeah.
Is it worth the same, you know?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. That's a really good point, actually. I hadn't really considered that, but I think that PSVR is still the best-selling headset, although I think the Oculus Go is now getting pretty close, basically. But yeah, I'm really glad to see PlayStation just continuing to invest in it. And then just quickly as well, also Days Gone coming to PC. Seems like it's a good fit for PC, to be completely honest, as well. Very good to see PlayStation continue to move in that direction and putting their games onto PC. More people get to play them. Absolutely great. Interesting to note that Jim Ryan was quite explicit in saying that this is about the money and this is about the rising cost of development, and we need to generate more income from these games, basically. However, off the back of that, do you now see it as inevitable that the really big PlayStation games, e.g. Spider-Man, God of War, Last of Us, are going to make their way onto PC at some point?
Inevitable, maybe slightly too strong a word, but by and large, yeah. I think that they'll work through older games first before we get any of those.
Well, that is literally what I was just going to ask you. Do we think we see historic PlayStation games coming over a PC as well? So again, thinking specifically about Uncharted, Infamous, even like back to like your Jack and Daxter's, Ratchet and Clanks, Killzone, things like that. Is that what we're... But seriously, like, are we about to see like a mass release, basically, or a mass movement of PlayStation IP going on to PC?
I mean, that would be phenomenal, but it's hard enough to get some of those games on PlayStation at the moment, so I would I would think
that's a fair point.
That might scupper some of them. But, there's long been a clamour for Bloodborne. That seems like an obvious one.
Oh, Bloodborne, of course. I
think that there's probably others from the early PS4 and the late PS3 era. I think you're spot on with Uncharted. I mean, I would have the Nathan Drake collection and Uncharted 4 on there as one kind of deal that you could get, because it's a totemic PlayStation franchise, which they are not really selling the console on at the moment. There is no new game in that series that you're trying to draw people in for, so why not put them out there, make another few million bucks on these older games and get people invested in what PlayStation and their studios are all about.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think it's a good move. I think this is a step in the right direction. It shows some growth, maybe, for PlayStation.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's all about money, but it's good. It's good for gamers. And
Absolutely.
I think it's good that they are getting these ports onto PC. I just hope that this port is maybe slightly better than the Horizon Zero Dawn port. I hope that they've learned from that, because I know that wasn't the smoothest. But yeah good to see all.
Interesting that Jim Ryan sort of said it all was fine. It definitely wasn't. But yeah, good that they're continuing on with this.
All right, loose news item number 3. It seems that Google Stadia leadership, specifically Phil Harrison, praised the devs for making great progress only 5 days before they ceased their internal game development and effectively laid a whole bunch of people off. Now, not only is that what we would call a total dick move, but Harrison would later admit during a very contentious, apparently, Q&A with the devs that he was aware that the studio was being shut down when he sent that email. But he expressed some regret, so good for him. Harrison also said that Microsoft's $7.5 billion purchase of Bethesda was a factor in shutting down their internal development as well at Stadia and deciding to pivot and work with external partners. I've read a few articles on this, basically, all of which reference the original Kotaku article, which broke this story. Again, links as always over on the show notes at PlayersToo.com. But none of them really explain why Xbox's purchase of Bethesda affected their decision. Because for me, the reason Microsoft bought Bethesda was to invest in their first-party development, because it was starting to flounder a bit. So buying Bethesda, I mean, wow, what a way to bolster your first-party studios. And that is the opposite of what Google Stadia have just done. They've absolutely canned theirs. On top of that, Lewis, there is apparently a bug in Journey to the Savage Planet which stops people from playing the game on Stadia. Journey to the Savage Planet was developed by Tycoon Studios, who were purchased by Stadia. However, they now seem to be struggling to fix this bug. You might be asking why, and the reason is because they sacked all the fucking staff that knew how to fix it.
Yep.
It's absolutely absurd. And as if that wasn't bad enough, it has been revealed this week that Google, id Software and Bungie are all being sued because their games did not stream at 4K as promised on Google Stadia, which, quotes, wrongfully generated millions of dollars in revenue as a result. Which is true. That is a true statement. I mean, honestly, it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And look, I would never, ever, ever advocate for someone losing their job. Well, certainly not unjustly, but in the face of all these devs losing their jobs or having to be relocated or just being in a horrible, horrible situation, I have no idea why Phil Harris still has a job. It is unbelievable how badly this has went. And continues to go. They faceplant it at every possible hurdle. It's like that fucking Sideshow Bob meme where he's stepping on all the rakes. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is quite a lot like that. Yeah, Stadia continues to step on the rakes, as you say. It just can't get anything. It can't get a win anywhere and doesn't really deserve one. This story as well, it's insult to injury, I think, for those devs, who, when that was announced, there was talk that they would be spun off into other parts of Google potentially, and maybe that's happened, but the fact that they can't cobble together people to fix Journey to the Savage Planet suggests that those people aren't really around anymore, which, is not good for the player who bought it, it's not good for the studio who built it, it's not good for Stadia who's still selling it, it's not good at all. And the fact that Phil Harrison made this bizarre kind of reach out to the staff ahead of sacking them all.
5 days before.
Yeah.
5 days.
Why go through that? What was the need to send that email to effectively reassure people that things were fine when they definitely weren't? You could have just been silent. No, there wasn't really any suggestion that any of that was coming. It wasn't like you send an internal email to quell suspicion that's coming from the media or anything like that. Stadia had just gone quiet. We were all waiting for them to do something.
Yeah, this announcement came totally out of the blue as well.
Yeah.
From our perspective, from the consumer perspective, you know, and it seems to be the same for the devs, which is even worse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and just quickly on the Bethesda point, I took it all to mean that they effectively looked at what Microsoft did as Microsoft saying it costs $7.5 billion to make first-party games, to make them well. We realise that we've got a problem. That's what it will cost to fix it. And interesting that PlayStation in that Jim Ryan interview are kind of saying similarly, like, we have to diversify our income streams because games are becoming more expensive to make. So it sounds to me like Phil Harrison and Stadia have just looked at that figure and gone, well, we're not fucking paying that. If that's what it takes to be in this business, we won't do it. But that raises two questions to me, Mark. One, how has Google not got the money to do that? They're an equivalent.
Well, they do.
Yeah, they're an equivalent business to Microsoft.
But let's put an end to that question. They absolutely do have the money to do this.
So they could have done it, absolutely. And two, if they didn't realise that is the kinds of money that you're talking about at this level of video game development, what were they doing in video game development?
Listen, could not agree more. I don't know how you begin in video game development and you don't understand that.
Yeah.
I mean, Amazon are guilty of this as well.
Yep.
But Google Stadia have just done it in a much more spectacularly bad way.
Exactly.
All right, Lewis, news item number 4. According to sources speaking to Spanish Pokemon fan site Centro Pokemon, remasters of Diamond and Pearl will be announced before the 27th. Now, the 27th is this weekend, and I've sort of just realised that this is a lose-lose situation for us, because if something is announced before this weekend, then we've missed it because of when we record, or something isn't going to be announced before this weekend, and we're going to look stupid. So, there we go. However, lending this rumour some credence was the discovery that the domain diamondpearl.pokemon.com was enabled but was taken down last month. Also, a French person by the name of Kalios on Twitter, who has apparently been right about Pokemon leaks in the past, has also said that they expected Pokemon to release remakes November 2021. The reason why I'm saying these nationalities is because the first one was in Spanish and the second one was in French, and I couldn't verify that. I cannot speak Spanish and cannot speak French, and I think most people listening to this podcast would agree I can barely speak English. So there we go. Diamond and Pearl is the next in line to be remade as well, so there's already been remakes of Red and Blue and Gold and Silver and Sapphire and Ruby. And at the end of last year, the Pokemon Company teased plans for, quotes, a very special upcoming celebration of Pokemon's 25th anniversary in 2021. They have already announced collaborations with Katy Perry and Post Malone in a very, very weird video. They've already released special anniversary merchandise because it's Pokemon and any excuse. And they've even reprinted classic Pokemon trading cards, which is the only awesome bit of the things that I just read out. We're also obviously getting new Pokemon Snap coming April the 30th. And basically, a lot of this rings true to me. I don't know if all the dates are going to be right, but the information rings true, you know?
You think that there will be a Diamond and Pearl remake then?
I think there will be a Diamond and Pearl remake. It's just the next one, you know, more than anything. It just makes sense that there would be one. And I think that this year makes sense for it. I mean, they're not going to release a new full-blown Pokemon game. Sword and Shield's not that long out, you know? So to commemorate the anniversary, if that's what they're trying to do, it just makes a lot of sense, you know?
It feels to me, as an outsider to this, that like the 4th generation Pokemon game to be remade is a weird thing to use to mark the anniversary. I suppose I'm saying that on a backdrop of Skyward Sword being used to celebrate Zelda's anniversary, but I don't know, it just feels like you would do a package of more or something. Is this enough for you as a Pokemon fan?
To be honest with you, I actually quite like this because this is where I dropped off the series and therefore this gives me an opportunity to play a game that at the time when it came out it would have been very, very, very fucking uncool for me to be still playing Pokemon basically. But now I'm nearly 30 and it's all good again.
Yeah. Sort of.
It's totally fine. So yeah, I'm alright with it, man, to be honest with you, but will the die-hard Pokemon fandom be satisfied with this? I don't know, but I know that a lot of people were looking for this remake, so a certain amount of them are going to be happy.
Yeah, fair enough, yeah. You can't really complain about it, I suppose, is the thing that you're not really entitled to a new game so soon after Sword and Shield, so remakes of an old one feel like the right thing to do.
Yeah, you've got Pokemon Snap coming, which was obviously a cult classic, absolutely loved by the people who loved it, wasn't for me at all, and then you've got a remake coming out later in the year. Makes sense to me. Alright, finishing off as we always do with a couple of shout-outs. Shout-out number 1, BlizzCon was this week. Not a huge amount of news came out of it, honestly, unless you were a big Blizzard fan, I suppose. There was some Overwatch 2 stuff, there was some World of Warcraft stuff, there was some Hearthstone stuff, and there was some Diablo 4 stuff. That was the sort of main things. But the thing that I wanted to briefly mention was the Diablo 2 remake, which leaked a number of weeks ago, has now been confirmed. Diablo 2 is widely considered to be one of the best games ever, and as they say in their own trailer, definitely defined the dungeon crawler genre. It will be called Diablo 2 Resurrection. It will be coming to PC and consoles, including current gen and Switch in 2021, and it will have cross progression between all the systems, which is really, really good to see.
That's great, yeah.
Any interest in this?
I mean, yes, in the sense that Diablo is one of those big video gaming franchises altogether that have kind of just passed me by. There's been elements of the whole series that I've been intrigued by, and kind of various points over the years that I've thought about jumping in and just haven't for different reasons. I even saw a few of my friends earlier talking about this, which surprised me. I didn't really think that I knew anyone who played Diablo very much. So I think that this could be the way in. If this is kind of the pinnacle for a lot of people, if people like this one the best and it's the one that's getting a big remake, then yeah, I think I would look at it. What about you?
Basically the same, man. I think that when this came out, initially, I believe anyway, it was a PC game, and it was one of these things. It was a PC game, it was over there doing its PC game things, and I was over here with my PlayStation, and I was quite happy.
Yeah.
And it just totally passed me by, as you said, but it is such an important franchise in video game history. I would at least like to dip my toe in,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Alright, shout out number 2. Microsoft have started a new program to help make games more accessible, and quite frankly, that is fucking awesome. Xbox have made this statement on their blog.
Developers now have the option to send Microsoft their Xbox or PC title and have it analysed and validated against the recommendations provided in the XAGs. Where issues are found, they are noted with reproduction steps, screenshots and other information to help the developer understand what aspect of a given experience may be challenging for certain gamers with disabilities.
So I think this is really fucking cool, man. Basically, it means that smaller studios will be able to get their games tested for better accessibility. Because accessibility, I think that we think, oh yeah, we just tick the accessibility box and then it's accessible and that's that. But accessibility is many different things to many different people, and I cannot imagine how hard it is to test for that comprehensively. In fact, to the point that it's basically impossible, I would have thought. But the fact that Microsoft and Xbox are making it easier for studios to make their games more accessible, generally speaking, I think that has to be commended hugely. I really, really do. Although I think that The Last of Us Part 2 is probably the high watermark for games in terms of accessibility, Naughty Dog are an enormous studio, and a lot of studios simply can't afford to test their game that comprehensively to get that level of accessibility in it, which is why this is so great. And in terms of platform holders, like, Microsoft are doing so much work here. Not only have they got this amazing program, but their adaptive controller has been, I think, revolutionary in the accessibility space. And I would very, very much like to see Sony and Nintendo and Steam and Epic and everyone just follow suit and do more here, you know?
Yeah, absolutely on that final point. Overall, I think this is fantastic news as well. I mean,
I cannot laud Microsoft enough for doing this.
Yeah.
This is so fucking good.
And it seems so straightforward as well when you look at it now. You're like, oh, of course, like, why wouldn't you have some people there that you could send your game to and test it and give updates and advice on? That's all people really need. I mean, you say there about people get nervous about accessibility and they probably freeze a little bit if they don't know how to make their game more accessible. And really all it is about having conversations with people who are in the know. And what Microsoft and Xbox are doing here is providing a very formal way by which people can do that. So yeah, I really hope this catches on in the industry. I would love to see just an industry-wide body be set up that can do this. So it's, imagine how good it would look if Microsoft said this service is actually available to anyone on any platform. There'll just be a fee for it or something. Amazing. That would be so fantastic. Let's keep an eye on this. I really hope to see some great things come out of this scheme.
I mean, I could not hope more that it goes well. Alright, shout out number 3. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 has been delayed indefinitely, and publisher Paradox Interactive have removed developer Hardsuit Labs from working on the game. They've basically sacked them. The game was originally supposed to come out in early 2020 before being delayed until late 2020. Then lead narrative designer Brian Matsuda and creative director Kai Clooney, I think that's how you say that, were dismissed from Hardsuit Labs in August last year. Again, basically sacked these two guys. A decision that was apparently jointly made between Hardsuit Labs and Paradox Interactive. The game was then delayed again until sometime in 2021. Now the game has been delayed indefinitely and Hardsuit Labs have been removed from the project completely, and Paradox are no longer taking pre-orders for the game. Paradox have made this statement on Twitter.
Good morning, everyone. As you've noticed, we've been keeping pretty quiet for a while. With this in mind, the first piece of news we have for you is to confirm that Bloodlines 2 is still in development. Secondly, we have made the hard decision that Hardsuit Labs will no longer be leading the development of Bloodlines 2, which also means that we will not be releasing in 2021 as previously planned. Since we cannot at this time communicate a new release date, we've also decided to stop accepting pre-orders for the time being. This game is very important to us and it has been an ambitious project from the very start. In order to meet our goals for it, we've come to the conclusion that a change is needed and as a result, more development time is required. We'd like to take this opportunity to honour Hardsuit Labs for their efforts and thank them for their hard work on the project. The studio has done a tremendous job in laying the foundations for the game, and we hope that you, the community, will also appreciate their contribution to Bloodlines 2. We're thankful for your continued support throughout the game's development. We understand how important this is to you, and we love to share more with you. As soon as we can, we'll let you know what the future development team of Bloodlines 2 will look like.
I mean, yikes, that is...
Yikes is the word.
That is real bad. I don't really remember hearing of something like this before. This is a very bad situation, it seems. I feel bad for fans of the game because I know that there are very avid fans of the game that were really looking forward to this sequel. It was never something that was on my radar, I have to admit, but Jesus Christ, I have no idea what is going to become of this game.
Yeah, that's a really good point, I think, Mark, because I would not be stunned if we never see this now. But yeah, feel bad for everyone involved. What a bizarre situation. I agree, I don't remember. I mean, you hear about devs leaving games, but not really at a point where you were sort of expecting them to be released. I mean, there was a trailer shown last year, you know. I thought we would be getting this fairly soon, so yeah, not good at all.
No. Alright, final shout out number 4. Gran Turismo 7 has officially been delayed until 2022. This was actually part of the same GQ interview that Jim Ryan gave. It seems that COVID has caused major problems for them, unfortunately. The game was initially supposed to release in early 2021 and was actually shown off at the PS5 launch showcase. But a subsequent trailer removed that date, which led a lot of people to believe that there was going to be a delay, and it has now been confirmed that that delay is until 2022. However, unlike Bloodlines 2, I'm not at all worried about this delay. If this is the amount of time that they require to make this game as good as it can be, particularly because it seems as though COVID was the problem, perhaps they've simply not had enough time to do the work that they needed to do. Totally cool. Delay it, make sure the game's as good as it can be, and release something that's polished and great and tight, and don't release too early, you know.
Agree 100% with that.
Alright, Lewis. Time for a beer, and then we'll be back with Topic of the Week. And we are back for Topic of the Week. Topic of the Week this week is things about gaming we love to hate, Lewis.
It is indeed, Mark, yes. So obviously we love games and everything about video gaming here, but
most things,
yeah. And this is sort of building on the back of the DualSense stick drift issue that has come up in the last couple of weeks. I just wanted to drill down into some of those things about gaming, maybe modern gaming, maybe just gaming generally, that really get under your skin and wind you up. Definitely not just a big moan here, though. They're going to keep it full of energy, nice and lighthearted, because we do get that a lot of these things are just unsolvable issues or things that are not likely to change. We're not just crying about this hobby that we love here, but it's definitely cathartic to release some of that pent-up anger now and then. So, Mark, in that spirit, what the fuck is wrong with video games?
Well, Lewis, one thing that I think is wrong with video games is a severe lack of local multiplayer.
Oh, yeah.
A severe lack of it. And I think that you will hugely agree with me. I am 100% behind people playing games online. That is super great, particularly now, Jesus Christ. what an invaluable thing that is. But as well, like, getting people together to play games is just such a different, awesome experience in and of itself, and I just feel as if that's fallen by the wayside in favour of the online games, basically since the PlayStation 3 generation, to be honest. That's when that really became very, very prevalent, and we started seeing local multiplayers just not included at all within games that even had online multiplayer. Thinking about Call of Duties, for years you couldn't play a local game of multiplayer on Call of Duty, which was one of the biggest multiplayer games in the world, which seemed bizarre to me. So yeah, that's one of the things that has upset me about games. Thinking back to our childhood, obviously, where me and you used to play a lot of games together, and right now that sadly isn't really an option for a lot of people.
Definitely, yeah. I can't imagine that there's any gamers out there who wouldn't welcome the return of more couch co-op local multiplayer games. It's such a huge part of why so many people fell in love with gaming overall.
Yeah, played games in the first place. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Even thinking back before we were kids and whatever, back to arcades, that was the thing. You went down to the arcade with your mates and you played video games together. It was always a sort of local social thing, And it's just a shame that part of gaming seems to not be getting the love I think it deserves, Lewis.
Definitely, it hasn't been, yeah.
What about you? What have you got?
One of my first ones is actually quite a specific issue that I've been encountering recently, and I've really tried to save it from colouring all my impressions of the game that I've been sharing with you. But there's this one issue that has kept coming up in Hitman over and over again that I think is actually probably a bit wider spread and that isn't being talked about much. And that is, Mark, the annoyance that is an always online single player game.
Interesting. Okay.
So Hitman is constantly online. It does a regular check of your online connection and your profile. I cannot see any good reason why it is doing that other than that it has a leaderboard system. And I think basically any game that has any kind of leaderboard system will be doing this quite a lot. But just one example, Mark, of the things that it has done. Just in the last few days of playing it alone, I have twice been chucked out of story cutscenes, because it has tried to check the connection and failed to find it and has just booted me back to the start menu. I cannot say...
Oh, wow, that's real bad.
So frustrating when it is a game that just does not need any of this. It does not have to be there. And the game, it really foregrounds when you first boot it up that saving online and offline saves are different and they will be treated differently. So you do go in knowing this stuff, but my God, man, when there is no real gameplay reason why it has to do this stuff, I just found myself being really irate at the game that I otherwise have adored playing for something so stupid. To me, it seems so daft that is there,
Well, interestingly, and I never brought it up because, quite frankly, I never really thought about it very much. Persona 5, Demon Souls, and Bloodborne all have this feature.
Interesting.
Bloodborne actually uses it very well.
Mm-hmm.
Demon Souls, I basically turned it off the entire time, and Persona 5, I've basically turned it off the entire time as well. Can't you just turn it off in Hitman?
No, it's fundamentally...
Oh, wow, okay, well, that's... Okay, yeah. They should build that
in. What else bothers you, Mark?
Well, sort of building on the back of my local multiplayer, I think an innocent multiplayer is sort of falling away as well, because multiplayer these days seems to be a lot about selling you microtransactions and additional content and skins, whereas like an innocent game of again going back to Call of Duty or Battlefield or something like that, where it was you just went in to play the game with a bunch of people online just for fun, and there wasn't a fucking battle pass ticking away in the background, or you weren't grinding to get your level up to something so that you get a new skin. The innocence of online multiplayer seems to have left very quickly.
Innocence is a really interesting word there, yeah. So you mean games where it's all just about getting together and playing. There's no higher objective than just having fun within the game.
Exactly that, Lewis.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. That has definitely fallen by the wayside. Obviously, modern multiplayer games are still really enjoyable for a lot of people, and things like battle passes give them a bit of a hook to stay in it.
Sure, and the thing is that I'm not saying, we need to do away with all of that. No, we don't. A lot of people love that stuff. A lot of people really, really like that stuff. I'm just saying that maybe not everything is that stuff,
Yeah, absolutely that. Yeah, a bit of balance. I mean, it feels like at some point there'll be a bit of a revival of that. At some point that will surely come back.
I would like to hope so, Lewis. I'd like to hope so. Right, what have you got?
Another one for me, which I suspect a lot of people are kind of feeling just now, I think it's time that we ended the lack of cross-save and cross-progression or save files carrying over across all of video gaming, Mark. I think it's time that that was done with.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely not disagree with that. I think that would be excellent. I think the chances of that happening are slim to none.
Extremely low.
I like that games like, Diablo 2, the Diablo 2 remake that we were just talking about, is coming to every platform under the sun, and your progression across all of those platforms will continue. You know what I mean? You can pick it up on your Switch, pick it up on your console, pick it up on your PC. You're playing the same game at exactly the same point, and I think that that's great. And I think that the more games that do that, the better it will be, you know? But in reality, I think that cross-save and cross-progression is a relatively new thing to a lot of devs, and I don't know, maybe they're not thinking about it, but I'm hoping that going forward we definitely see more and more of that. Will it become ubiquitous at any point? I doubt it, but it would be great if it did.
Yeah, I doubt it would become ubiquitous. And obviously, I mean, I think the biggest blockade to this really has been technical issues over the years. And yeah, if you're a smaller team published by a smaller company, that might just be a bridge too far. But the thing that it really got to me recently, Mark, was, you know, when the Control Ultimate Edition was announced to be coming to PS Plus, one of the free games. Reading into all that, it turns out you could not carry your PS4 save forward. I assume the same is the case on Xbox. I didn't double check that. If you or I jumped into Control Ultimate Edition, you cannot carry your progress forward from PS4. I was really keen to see, one, what the game looked like on next gen with full ray tracing and all that, but I did think it would be interesting to give some of the DLC a shot, particularly because I found the end of the base game quite disappointing, and I thought, well, maybe that will turn my view of it around a bit, and it's just not there, and I cannot see any good reason why I can't just pull my save from one console to the other and I would be playing a game for them, which I will not now be playing, you know, and I just think it's time that got sorted out.
Yeah, I think that Control is a particularly shit case when it comes to this, to be honest with you. I think that the way that they've handled their Ultimate Edition, or whatever the fuck it is that they call it, with regards to how it carries over across generations, has not been great. But I do agree with you. I think that if you can play that game and you have a save for that game, regardless of platform, you should be able to access it.
Yeah, 100%. Particularly when games are being given away across different platforms and pop up on different services. You know, there's a lot of people who have a lot of different ways to play the same game now, and they would if they could continue their same save file.
Absolutely.
Anything else for us, Mark?
Well, just one last one, I suppose. Demos loose.
Demos. Yes, of course.
I miss demos so much. I know that we're beginning to see a bit of a revival for demos, really, and we only have to look back at the Nintendo Direct to see that they have started to promote demos. Project Triangle Strategy, which is one I'll be jumping into, but there was others as well, if I remember. But what I think I miss is getting them. Well, we used to get them with the official PlayStation magazine, and it was just a smattering of different games. Do you know what I mean? It was just like, go and try these. Do you know what I mean? You might find something you like. You would have never have played it otherwise. Go and try this. And I think that there's a bit of that missing still. Like, you should be able to download a demo pack every month or something like that, you know? I think something like that would be really, really good, because we both found great games playing demos like that, and above anything else, like, had a good time playing the demos as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you often played games that you would never have any intention of buying eventually, but that 1 20-minute window of it was enough. You got some entertainment out of that. Like you say, introduced you to so many games. I think something like you just described there, Mark, on the Switch in particular. I mean, think about how many games come to the eShop every week. I mean, it's a deluge. It's absurd.
Truckload. Steam, like, how well would this work for Steam as well?
Yeah, on Steam, given how big that is as well. You know, plug in a few of your favourite categories, genres or whatever, and just be fed some stuff. A couple of vertical slices. Try out some new stuff. I think it would be amazing. I totally agree. I lament the death of demo culture. I love to see it come back in its small way, at least at the moment, and let's hope more of that comes along.
Absolutely, man.
All right, Mark, just before we run out of time then, I might run through a few extra ones that I had on my list just to get your quick take on it. So, again, thinking of everything from hardware down to tiny software grapes. The first one for me, and I know it bothers you, is mobile games, Mark, that prevent you from listening to any other music or sounds on your mobile device while you're playing it.
Yes, I hate that. I've actually dropped several games. What I want is to play a game and also listen to a podcast at the same time. If your game prevents me from doing this, the chances of me sticking around on it for very long are almost nil.
Yeah, I think on mobile that's such an important thing. Obviously some games won't lend themselves to it, narrative games and stuff, fair enough, but any game that could easily have something else playing in the background should consider it, definitely. Another one which we touched on earlier, Mark, was a lack of in-game clocks on games generally.
Well, I think that this is a particular PlayStation problem, to be honest with you. I don't know if Xbox do it as well. I don't know if Xbox tell you how long you're playing any one specific game, but PlayStation do not, and it blows my mind, and I do not understand why.
What about, Mark, for me, this is a huge one. The constant game of inventory management that a lot of games make you play, stroke the amount of pointless and excessive loot that particularly a lot of RPGs have these days.
I'm less convinced by that one, because that's sort of part of the game. Like, scavenging is a part of certain games, so I'm sort of alright with that. As you know from your experience with playing Fallout 4 with me, I'm an avid scavenger in games, and I don't think you are.
I don't mind it, I just hate when I become over encumbered in a game and I have to just stop doing whatever fun stuff I'm doing to work out which stuff can be
I will say
dropped.
this. Striking that balance right is an art. And if it goes too far where you are finding yourself constantly in menus and not playing the fucking game, then yes, that is bad. I will definitely say that.
And finally, Mark, another one that has been plaguing me a little bit recently are cutscenes that you cannot skip even if you've already watched them.
Yes, that is extremely dumb. That should come to that immediately. I think that all cutscenes should be able to be paused, and all cutscenes should equally all be able to be skipped. All, irrelevant of what else is happening. Unless it's hiding a load screen. I think that's the only acceptable situation. But 90% of cutscenes aren't doing that, and they're just showing you the story, or at least for some portion of the cutscene, they're just showing you the story. Yes, all cutscenes should be able to be skipped, and all cutscenes should be able to be paused, without question.
100%. When we both replayed Spider-Man Miles Morales to get the platinum, and I was so annoyed, particularly how random they seemed to be in that game, which ones you could skip and which ones you couldn't. And I was just thinking the whole time, and you could have logged that I have watched these in their entirety. You could log that I had skipped them if I had done, but I've watched them, and here I am watching it again. It drives me mad.
Yeah. Again, the only reason I can really think of that is that it's hiding a load screen, honestly.
I think you're right, yeah.
Alright, Lewis, I think we'll have to call it a day there. I'd like to remind everyone that you can find PlayersToo on all the social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. And you can find our written content over at PlayersToo.com. That's PlayerSToo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, it really, really helps us out. It does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. I know I say this twice a week, every single week, but it does not become less important on a weekly basis. If you could take that 5 seconds to give us 5 stars, again, it really, really does mean a lot, and it doesn't take you a lot of time. I'd like to remind everyone that our play-along game for this month is What Remains of Edith Finch. We've only got 1 week left, Lewis. Have you started?
I have not started.
I knew you'd leave it to the last minute. You were giving it all this. I'll be ready loads of time ahead. But nope.
I saw that Great Blasphemous deal and I was away. But yeah, definitely this week I'm going to make proper time for it. I'm looking forward to it.
Nice one, man. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week.
Thanks.